Okay, we're going to wait a few moments as our participants join us from around the world. We're going to wait about 30 seconds or so. In the meantime, I ask that everyone test their audio. If you can hear us and see us, please do send us a quick note in the chat so that we know that we're coming in loud and clear. I do see some of our participants coming in. We are delighted to be hosting this session today. The session is going to be recorded, so for those of you joining in today, we're just going to wait another 15 seconds or so as participants join in. Okay. All righty. So I want to begin by welcoming everybody today. Let me begin by first introducing myself. My name is Daniela Coleman. I am the Director of Admissions and Recruiting at Johns Hopkins SAIS European campus in Bologna, Italy. I'll let Professor Reagan introduce himself.
My name is Chris Reagan, and I am an economist and the Director of the Max Bell School of Public Policy at McGill University in Montreal.
Fantastic. And later on in this presentation, we also will have a current student who's done both the MPP and currently in the Maya program to share his experiences with us. So today's presentation is going to be about 30 minutes. Myself and Professor Reagan will present each of our respective programs. We'll then have a few words from our current student, but we will also open it up for an interactive question and answer session. If you haven't used Zoom before, please submit your questions in the Q&A box. At the end of the presentation, we will read them out loud. And we will be using the chat function really to post any additional information as we go through the presentation. So I appreciate you using the chat box for the questions. This session is being recorded. So at the end of the session, we will send you the recording, and we look forward to getting to know you as we go through our presentation. So I will begin. I do want to give you a brief overview, a little bit about Johns Hopkins, if you're not familiar with us, and particularly our campus in Europe. But today's session will obviously focus on the cooperative degree program that we currently have with McGill's Max Bell School of Public Policy. I do want to also spend some time talking about career opportunities, our Alumni Network, but also speak about our admissions process as well as funding. Briefly, for those of you that not be familiar, Johns Hopkins SAIS is the oldest research institution in the United States. Our main campus was actually founded in the US state of Baltimore in 1876. And today we currently have over 9 research divisions with 26,000 students. The European campus of Johns Hopkins SAIS, the School of Advanced International Studies, is one of the younger research divisions. Our campus was founded in Washington, D.C. by 2 American statesmen, Paul Nietzsche and Christian Herder. At the time, they were looking for methods to train men and women to deal with the realities of the post-World War. And so in 1943, they assembled scholars to teach international relations, international economics, and foreign languages. About 10 years later, here in Europe in 1955, Professor Seagrove Haynes, who was a professor of diplomatic history, founded the precursor to SAIS Europe, the Bologna Center. And today, we are a global campus with a presence on 3 continents. SAIS has a campus in Washington, D.C., has a campus in Bologna, Italy, and our 3rd campus was founded in 1986 in Nanjing, China. This is important because any student that enrolls in SAIS is part of a student body of over 1,000 students in 3 countries in 3 continents. This slide lists all the programs that we offer at SAIS Europe, but today's presentation is specifically going to be focusing on the Masters of Arts in International Affairs. The Masters of Arts in International Affairs is a 2-year program that's offered in Bologna, Italy. It offers a flexible curriculum for students that can have the option to produce an original thesis or extended research paper. We've recently signed about a year ago a cooperative degree with McGill, and what I do list here are all the various cooperative degrees. The Maya program can be completed in 2 years if you spend the 2 years in Bologna, or you can do this in conjunction with one of our cooperative degrees. McGill University is one of the cooperative degrees where students can apply to either campus and begin either at one campus or another, finishing with a master's degree from both. This means that you can begin at Max Bell, apply to us while you're a student at Max Bell, and come to us for the second year. We would recognize the credits that you had at Max Bell, and you would finish in just a year's time. This also means that you could begin your studies at SAIS Europe, apply to Max Bell later. If you are admitted at Max Bell, you would take a leave of absence from SAIS, you would go to Max Bell, and at the end of your studies, you would get both degrees. We do have students that apply to both programs at the same time. If you would decide to do that, you would just defer one and begin with the respective program. The beauty of the Maya degree is that you are part of a truly international student body. At SAIS Europe, we have about 200 students every year from about 40 different nationalities. In addition to all the different nationalities, we also have cooperative degrees from students from a variety of different universities. But we are very, very excited to have a presence in North America through McGill University. I just want to briefly speak about the core requirements for students that do the Masters of Arts in International Affairs. If you do come to us from the cooperative degree, you would spend a year with SAIS. As a one-year student from a cooperative degree from McGill, you would either take six courses with us and produce your thesis, or 8 non-language courses throughout the year. What's very unique about our program is that the thesis is optional. So if you are interested in doing a research paper, you would actually have to apply while you're a student. If you are accepted, then you would work very closely with our student advisors. For those of you that are native English speakers, another important requirement of doing the Maya program is that upon completion of our program, you have to be proficient in a foreign language. That means if you start at Max Bell and come to us, you only have 1 year to reach language proficiency. The same goes if you start at SAIS and you go to Max Bell, you still have to meet that language proficiency at the end of graduation. If you are a non-native English speaker, your language proficiency is in English, so you don't have to worry about that. But you do have the opportunity to take a number of different foreign languages at SAIS Europe. We offer Arabic, German, Italian, Russian, Spanish, Portuguese, and Chinese at the Confucius Institute. Students that do the Maya program come from a variety of different academic backgrounds. But one thing that we do stress here at SAIS is economics. Now, for those of you that haven't done a lot of economics in your undergraduate degrees, do not worry. We have English majors that do very well here at SAIS. Before coming to SAIS, students need to have taken principles of economics before enrolling. You can apply without having taken principles of economics, but if you are admitted into our program, you would need to meet that requirement before graduation. Many of our students that don't have this requirement take an online course that we offer in the spring before enrollment. Students in the Maya program have complete flexibility to take whatever courses they want. However, we do require you to take at least 2 economics courses. What does that look like in practice? Well, if you decide not to do a thesis and you're coming to us from Max Bell's program, that means you would have to take 4 classes in the fall and 4 classes in the spring. One of the 4 classes in the fall has to be economics, and one of the 4 classes in the spring has to be economics. If you are accepted to do a thesis and you spend a year with us, you still have the same requirements. It just means that you would do 4 classes in the fall, of which 1 have to be economics, 2 classes in the spring, of which 1 have to be economics, and we would leave the rest of the time for you to do the thesis. Enough about academics. I do want to stress the importance of our research institutes as well. Bologna has 2 research institutes that students can actually do internships with. The Bologna Institute for Policy Research, which is a research division of Johns Hopkins SAIS. We host a number of different evening seminars, and later on I'll put them in the chat box, of which students can attend in the evening. We have various policymakers, affiliate faculty that are speaking on issues of current events that you can attend outside the classroom in the evening. Students can also volunteer to work for Beeper. They're actually paid for these positions and they look great on your resume. And in addition to Beeper, we also have another research institute called the Center for Constitutional Studies and Democratic Development. For those of you that are interested in constitutional law and not necessarily going to become lawyers, the CCSDD is a research partnership between the Bologna School of Law and Johns Hopkins SAIS. They conduct research and training in the field of comparative constitutional law, focusing on countries undergoing a process of democratic transition. The CCSDD also organizes a number of study trips. One of the more popular study trips is actually conducted over the Christmas break. It's open to all students, and students actually take a trip to Sarajevo where they study democracy building in countries that have undergone constitutional changes. Students at SAIS are part of an alumni network of 22,000 graduates living in 140 countries, working in a variety of different professions. Not only are you graduates of SAIS, but you are also part of the Johns Hopkins Alumni Network, which numbers 180,000 alumni worldwide. We refer to ourselves as a professional program because in addition to giving you the skill sets to make you a working professional who obviously has the knowledge and the background to hit the ground running, we also think it's very important to have hard skill sets. As such, as student at SAIS, you have access to career services. And the career services are defined as helping you reach your career objectives, honing development skills, and preparing you for an internship and job interviews. We survey our MAIA graduates after graduation. The last graduating class had an employment rate of 92% after graduation. Our MAIA graduates are working in professions around the world. As graduates of SAIS, you could work in the private, public, nonprofit, and multilateral field. I've listed here some of our employers, but this is obviously not an exhaustive list. We have alumni that come to campus to speak about their professions in a variety of means. One of the popular recruiting tools is our annual career day. Last year, we had 30 alumni that joined us virtually because of COVID, but are planning to come in person this year to share their experiences in a variety of different fields. We also conduct career treks to cities such as London, Geneva, Brussels, Amsterdam, Rome, Milan, and Vienna, where students take treks of 2 to 3 days to meet with employers, to speak with alumni, and to learn about the various professions that our graduates work in. I want to spend just a few moments to talk about the nuts and bolts of the application process before handing the presentation over to Professor Reagan. Our application deadlines are approaching. Our main deadline is January 7th. So if you the majority of our graduates apply by a regular deadline of January 7th, but we also do have an early deadline of November 1st. I would recommend that you apply to the deadline that most meets your needs. It's not that if you apply early, you have a better chance of getting in or that you're binded to the decision. So do take your time and pick the deadline that best fits you. Putting an application together is rather straightforward. Our application is obviously virtual. All students must fill in an application specifying that they're applying to the MAIA program. If you're currently in the cooperative degree with McGill, you would put that in on your application. We ask all applicants to submit an updated resume, a statement of purpose, and an analytical essay. Just a few words. The statement of purpose and analytical essay are both 600 words, but they're very different pieces of writing. The analytical essay is actually an example of your academic writing. It should be on any issue of international or economic significance. Please submit something that you're interested in because this will probably be the basis of your interview. The statement of purpose, on the other hand, which is also 600 words, is a statement about you. It's sort of the cover letter to your application. Why are you applying to SAIS? Why are you interested in this cooperative degree? Where do you see yourselves in 5 years? Why is this the right program for you? Tell us something that we can't just gather from reading your application. We do take an holistic approach, but the more you can tell us about you and why you're applying to SAIS gives us a better idea of you as an applicant. We do require 2 letters of recommendation. Encourage your recommender to submit a letter. These letters can either come from an academic or a supervisor or a combination of both. You can submit up to 3, but 2 are the requirement. We do require transcripts. And obviously, if you haven't taken a TOEFL or an IELTS as a non-native English speaker within the last 2 years, those are a requirement. Just a word about that. Our minimum requirement for TOEFL is 100. Our minimum requirement for the IELTS is 7. We also have an open day on November 29th, and I'll put some more information about that in the chat. Just a few words. We are an American institution, and we realize that we are expensive, but I don't want that to intimidate anybody that applies. Our application is actually free. There's no cost to apply, just the time. We do give out generous financial aid. I would say a competitive student can get up to half tuition, but the way that our students fund their education is through a variety of means. It's through whatever institutional funding they can get from us, from external sources of funding, and I would strongly encourage you to look at our website for ideas about where these foundations are, through savings, in some cases loans, and even some cases on-campus employment. While we do have a very competitive employment rate, and our graduates end up in very successful careers, I encourage you to look at this investment as a long-term investment. Unlike a car, which depreciates the second you take it out of the automobile concessionary, a SAIS education is one of the few investments that will appreciate over a lifetime. So as I mentioned, we have a number of different scholarships. I would encourage you to look into them. If you do apply for financial aid, make sure to send us your financial aid form by February 15th. And with that, here's our email, but I do want to stop sharing my presentation and give the word to Professor Reagan. And we look forward to receiving your questions at the end of his presentation. Professor Reagan, over to you.
Thank you, Daniela. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. I am going to be a little bit different in my presentation. Daniela has covered lots of the things about the Max Bell program and the SAIS program, and one can be before the other or the other before the one. I just want to focus on the MPP program at Max Bell, and in particular, how it is different from many other MPP programs. And so I'm going to give you a bit of a high-level presentation, and I'm going to say a few times that lots of details are available on our website as they are. So I encourage you to take a look. So let me just say at the top that what our mission is. The Max Bell School, by the way, is a new school. It's only been around for 4 years. Now, McGill University has been around for 200 years. In fact, this is our 200th anniversary this year, from 1821 when we were founded. But the Max Bell School of Public Policy at McGill is only 4 years old, okay? And in fact, we are currently in our 3rd cohort of MPP students, and if you were to apply for the next academic year, you'd be in the 4th cohort. How is our MPP program different? Well, it's reflected by our teaching mission. We want to bring together people from very different perspectives, very different work backgrounds, very different academic disciplines, and not just among the students, but among the faculty as well. We strike a much different balance than most programs between theory and practice. We have core courses that I'll talk about where you see the theory of public policy, but much more than in any other program I know of, you will be exposed to policy practitioners and a lot of applied ideas, if you like. We don't have courses where we talk about specific types of policy. For example, you will see no course about environmental policy or health policy or trade policy. What you will see is courses that are about the many things that make any kind of policy complex. And that's actually a distinguishing feature of our program. And it goes with the fact that it is an 11-month program. 2/3 of the MPP programs out there are 20 months or longer. Ours is 11 months. So it's a short, intensive, really jam-packed program. We have practical skills and networking integrated throughout the program in a way that most other programs do not. And we have much smaller class sizes. Our cohort this year is 36. It's a little bit smaller because of COVID. It was supposed to be about 40, but next year the cohort will probably be 45 students. So it's still much smaller than most. So here's a diagram that shows you how the five, I think you can see my cursor. Perhaps Daniela, you can tell me if you can see my cursor, or Katrine.
Yes.
But these are the 5 key elements of the program. And what this graph does is shows you how those 5 components are laid out over the course of the 11 months. Let me go through these 5 elements right now, very briefly, and then I'm going to come back to this diagram and it will make a little bit more sense. So our core policy courses, these are 3-credit courses, but we, instead of lasting for 12 weeks, which is conventional, we do them in 6 weeks, but you only do 2 courses at a time. So your brain isn't split up into 4 parts and you're thinking about 4 different courses. Your brain is split up only into 2 parts for 6 weeks. So you do economics at the same time you're doing the political landscape, something like that. You typically have weekly assignments in these courses. Some of them are group assignments, some of them are individual assignments. All of those assignments are very policy applied. And there's some sample core courses that you see there. I encourage you to take a look at the website because I have not listed all of the courses here, but on the website, there's a full list of all of the courses and 1 or 2 paragraph description of the courses and who's currently teaching them. But these courses, I should say, the core policy courses are taught mostly by academics, all right? In the middle of the fall term and in the middle of the winter term, we have a break from the core courses and we have 2 weeks of policy case studies. And these things really kind of bring the program to life because this is where we bring in policy practitioners. And the whole point of a policy case study is you bring 1 policy practitioner in. Actually, we do about 8 every term and you choose 2 of them. But in each policy case study, you have 1 practitioner covering the complete narrative arc of 1 policy event or 1 policy situation, and encountering all of the complexities that you encounter in any real world policy case study. You see some examples of the policy case studies there. They're extremely applied, and there's only typically 1 person that could do each one of these case studies. So when I'm filling up the curriculum with courses, I'm looking for a fascinating individual who has a fascinating policy story that they lived through. So again, you can take a look at the website and you can see these descriptions. About half of these are Canadian case studies and half of them are about our international case studies. I should say, by the way, that our cohort for the past 3 years has been over 50% international. Over 50% international. By international, I mean non-Canadian. The complexity seminars take place in May and June. So by the time you get to the beginning of May, you've taken 8 core policy courses. You've taken 4 of the policy case studies, 2 in the fall, 2 in the winter. You get to the complexity seminars. And what we do is over the course of a month, we have 8 complexity seminars on offer and you choose 4. Again, small class sizes. And the whole point of a complexity seminar is that it's the logical inverse of the policy case study. So whereas a policy case study is 1 policy encountering many complexities, the complexity seminar is 1 type of complexity that basically applies to all kinds of policy implementations, all kinds of policy areas. So the whole point of this course is that by the end of a 1-week course, you see this particular complexity as a general phenomenon with applications to many types of policies. So you see examples there, and again, check out the website because there are 8 or 10 of these that are on offer in any given year, and you choose 4 of them. These courses, like the policy case studies, are taught almost exclusively by policy practitioners. So you're getting a lot of exposure to policy practitioners through the case studies and the complexity seminars. Now, throughout the year, we have professional development days. And these basically happen 1 Friday every month. The way we've done the schedule this year is that there are no classes scheduled on Fridays. So that means for 3 Fridays a month, you can sleep in or go skiing or go hiking or whatever. But for 1 Friday a month, you come in for the professional development day. And this is a full day of skills workshops, working on your policy lab, which is your big major project that I'm going to talk about in a bit, and having networking opportunities with potential employers. And so there's a list of some of the skills, and we have hard skills and soft skills represented in these skills workshops. I think these professional development days are a really important part of the MPP program at Max Bell. I think it's really important that students come out of this program with some of these skills really under their belt, and it doesn't happen in a lot of other programs. Now, the policy lab is the big enchilada, what's often called a capstone project in this program. Students work in groups, and they work in groups of 4 or 5. They start the project in November, and it culminates in a full presentation that you've worked out a full policy solution to a policy problem that you do in July, middle of July. And here what we do is we are recruiting outside organizations, and you see some examples there of the kinds of organizations that we have worked with in our first 3 years. But some of these are local NGOs, some of them are international organizations, some of them are government departments, some of them are private corporations, but they all have a policy problem. And so we basically match up a team of students, 4 or 5 students, with an organization with a policy problem, and then you work pretty hard, frankly, between November and July to work on that a full policy solution to that policy problem. In November, December, January, February, you're working kind of behind the scenes because you're busy taking other courses, but by the time you get to June and July, you are really putting the pedal to the metal and working full-time on this. Now, how do you get into this program? I think it's really useful if students coming into this program have some exposure to political science, economics, quantitative methods, statistics, some math. Now, none of that is absolutely essential, but I just want you to note that it's very valuable to have that. So Daniela was talking about the economics focus in the Johns Hopkins program in Bologna. Well, I wouldn't say that we have an economics focus, but we do have an economics requirement in our program. And if you come in and you have no math and you have no statistics and you have no economics, it's still doable for you. It's just that much tougher. So I think it's a clear advantage if you come in with some of those quantitative skills. I think it's a clear advantage if you come in with work experience, 3 to 6 years, something like that, after your bachelor's degree. Again, it's not an absolute requirement, but the program works best when the students have a certain level of intellectual maturity that comes from years working. It doesn't have to be years working in a policy environment. I think that's got some advantages, but just years of work experience, I think, adds to that intellectual maturity. That third bullet there is really important. And I just saw that Benjamin Dooley is on the line, and he's going to be speaking to you in a few moments. Ben was one of our first cohort of 31 students, and I think he will underline this point as well, that when you arrive at McGill and at Max Bell ready for 11-month program, you need to prepare yourself for an intensive program, because we have designed the program in such a way that we have used the calendar, I think, very creatively, but there's no question about it. It is a lot of work, and we've jammed a lot of stuff in so that you can be out in 11 months. And of course, the key advantage of that is that you can get an MPP in 1 year rather than taking 2 years off from a job and from income. Overall, we're really just looking for excellent and interesting students. And overall, the cohort is very diverse and very interesting. And I encourage you to look at our website, and you can still see the list of all of our first cohort of 31 students and our second cohort of 35 and this year's cohort of 36. And it's a pretty interesting bunch, and I encourage you to take a look. The admissions requirements, all of this information, by the way, is on the website, so I won't belabor it. But of course, you need a bachelor's degree first to come in. That's a McGill requirement. You need a minimum cumulative GPA of 3.0 or 3.2 in your last 2 years. The truth is, we're actually admitting people with a higher cumulative GPA than that. Probably the average GPA among the students that we accept into the program is 3.5 or 3.6, something like that. The deadline for completed applications is March 1st, 2022. Now, I want to pause here and emphasize a point. That's the last date that you can have an application complete. It's not the last date that you can start an application. You've got to actually have it finished with all of the accompanying material by March 1st. But, and this is a very important but, there is no advantage to leaving this late. If you have a completed application in by February 1st, we will review your application sooner. If you have it in by January 15th, we will actually review it sooner. So we will be doing rolling admissions here, and the sooner you have a completed application into the program, into us, the sooner we can actually review the program. This is a private or a self-funded program. The tuition fees for the coming academic year or just under 38,000 Canadian dollars. For those people who don't know how much the Canadian dollar is worth, today it is worth 79 cents US. So if whatever US dollar figure you think about 0.8 or 80% of that in terms of Canadian dollar value, okay? Sorry, I think I said that wrong. So the Canadian dollar is worth less than the US dollar, so it takes more Canadian dollars to get that, okay? So multiply that number of 38,000 by 0.8, and that'll give you the US dollar value. There are some ancillary fees that are extra. They're about $2,000, or that's what they were last year. Dental and health insurance is also extra. It's higher for international students. Now, there are several Max Bell School entrance scholarships available, and you are automatically eligible for these, okay? You do not have to apply, and we will be handing out several every year, but you do not have to apply for these. There's also additional funding that is available, and if you look at our website, you will see that we have collected a whole bunch of possible scholarships and fellowships that you might be eligible for. And what you've got to do, we've got a 2-paragraph description of about 25 different sources of funding. You just need to go through those pretty quickly. We've assembled all the information for you conveniently, but very quickly you can read the 2-paragraph explanation and see whether you are eligible or not. Career planning is an important part of our program. We have a dedicated professional in the program, dedicated to the Max Bell School, who is helping you prepare yourself for the job market. Now, of course, most of our students have come from employment because they've got 3 to 6 years of work experience. So some of them are going back to their jobs. Some of them are using the Max Bell degree to completely change their direction of their career. But our person is here to help you, help you work on cover letters, help you in an interview to develop, kind of an interview style, help you make contacts. She is setting up networking events that some of them are integrated with the professional development days. Some of them are stand-alone. She's got workshops on all aspects of this. And another point that's just worth remembering is that the MPP program itself connects you with many, many policy practitioners, because we're bringing in those practitioners to teach the policy case studies and the complexity seminars. So you're going to meet a lot of people in this program. This is a sample of institutions that have hired our students in the first year. We had, in our 31 students that graduated in our first cohort, 26 of them had jobs within about 3 months. I just actually saw the data for our second cohort. So a second cohort that started and finished with remote delivery. Second cohort of 35 students we currently have, and this is only 3 months later, we've got 21 of them with employment and a few others with some leads. So we're doing quite well in terms of placement. And if you look at this list, what you'll see is a wide variety of institutions. You've got international institutions, you've got NGOs, you've got think tanks, you've got government departments, you've got business councils, you've got all kinds of organizations, which is not surprising. There's a lot of kinds of organizations in any society, frankly, that are hiring and interested in hiring MPP graduates. Final couple of words about McGill and Montreal. Now, McGill, I said at the beginning, it's a 200-year-old university. Even though the School of Public Policy is only 4 years old, McGill researchers have been doing policy-related research for almost 200 years. And there's policy-related research excellence in the law faculty, in the agriculture faculty, science. So there's policy discussions going on all around campus. McGill has been ranked by the Maclean's magazine, which is a major national news magazine. We've been rated the #1 university in Canada for something like 15 consecutive years. I think we just saw it again this year. There's, of course, you can quibble with all of those rankings, but there's just no question that McGill has long been considered a premier university in Canada. And Montreal is just a fabulous place to be. Montreal is a city of about 5 million people, mostly on an island in the St. Lawrence River. It is a tremendously cosmopolitan city. It's got 4 universities plus other colleges. There's about probably 200,000 university level students in Montreal. It's not just a bilingual city, it's a multilingual city and very cosmopolitan. It's got a great restaurant and coffee culture. It has been unfortunate, frankly, for the last year or more, when a lot of those restaurants and cafes were closed, but they are now all opening up again. So Montreal is a very affordable place to live too, very affordable and very safe. So I'm going to stop there. I've probably spoken for too long, and I think we're now turning it over to the one and only Benjamin Dooley.
Benjamin, are you ready? Fantastic. So as I mentioned earlier, Benjamin is one of our first students who has done did his program at McGill and now is currently here at SAIS Europe. He's just finished class, but I'll let him introduce himself, and he will also be on to answer Q&A. So Benjamin, thank you for being here today and sharing your experiences as a current student.
Not at all. Thanks so much. Hello, Internet. And hello, Professor Reagan. I hope everything's well.
How are you, Benjamin? I see that you have shaved off that facial hair that you had for about a year.
I mean, it went on and off kind of thing. Beards are good for winter. So maybe that's my first tip for students.
Okay.
Yes, so as mentioned, my name is Benjamin Dooley, and I'm did the Master of Public Policy at McGill, and now I am here at SAIS Europe. And just a little bit briefly about myself, my experience, what drew me into it, and hopefully some useful tips for anybody thinking of applying. I am originally from Canada, from Toronto, and I spent some time working a little bit in Canadian politics. Also worked as a freelance journalist, which was not lucrative at all, and also as a researcher at a think tank in Montreal. I found that in my time, particularly as a journalist and as a researcher, some of it is you're reporting on things and you'd like to maybe hopefully see your way in towards having a bit more of an impact. I also found out in a lot of my reporting, I was bumping up against a lot of policy questions. And so what I was really interested and drawn to was really getting into the meat and potatoes of policy and learning really what are the things that are on a policymaker's desk that they have to balance when making a decision, and how best to hopefully arrive at a good decision, sort of thing. At SAIS Europe, it's given me the opportunity to meet, actually in both programs, I met a very diverse set of students from all kinds of different backgrounds, all kinds of different countries. Here in Europe, there's a lot of connections, obviously, to Europe itself and also to the United States. So in both programs, you really get a sort of international perspective and feel and a group of networks that you can utilize. Some tips, I guess, I would have for anybody interested. It helps to have, I would say, a good writing sample, and it's generally good. I think it's generally good advice for anybody looking, whether it's graduate school, law school, or whatever you're looking to. It's good to highlight your experience and directly link it to why you're interested in public policy and what you're hoping to gain. You don't have to have answers to all of those questions, obviously, but sometimes people do tend to make a mistake of maybe rehashing things that are in your resume for your application, but they already have your resume, so they already know that it's their opportunity to sort of get to know you and why this exactly. So that's those are just a few tips, and I'm happy to answer any questions. And yeah, thank you so much for having me again.
Thank you, Benjamin. First, I know you just finished class, so I really appreciate it if you fitting us in after a long day at school. So we have over 20 minutes or so. So this is the opportunity for those of you that are online to submit questions. What we're going to do is I'm going to read the question out loud. If your question is targeted to someone in particular, whether it's Professor Reagan or myself or Benjamin, please put that in the question. Let us know where you're writing from. We're always excited to see where our students are writing from. I'm going to begin by reading the questions, and I encourage all of you, we have over 20 people online. This is a great opportunity. You have a captive audience, and I hope you do use it to ask all your questions. There's no such thing as a silly question, whether it's specific or general. We want to be a resource for you. So the first question is submitted from Sumaya. Apologies if I've mispronounced your name. The prospective student asks, is there still access to funding to fully cover expenses associated with the SAIS program? So at the beginning of our presentation, I did mention that about 50% of our students receive some sort of aid. A good financial aid package can cover about half tuition. We do have a few full tuition scholarships, but they're very specific. The students have to meet very specific criteria. So to manage expectations, I would say that if a student is awarded funding, there will be a gap in funding. And so I strongly encourage you to see about how much money you can get from us. You don't have to put in a separate application to request funding. You just have to send in your financial aid form. But we do give out funding, but there will be a gap. I know that for students that are applying from Canada, and Benjamin can speak to this, the provinces do give out funding. I don't know, Benjamin, can you share the experience about applying to your province when you applied for additional funding?
Yes, generally it's a fairly straightforward process. There are exceptions to that, of course, yeah, I applied through my home province, and it should be through the provincial student aid website, and you can follow things from there.
Okay, great. The next question can be answered by both Professor Reagan and myself. I'll let Professor Reagan answer it first. It's a question about loans. Are loans available for non-US students? I am an Ethiopian and unfortunately do not have the means to finance a degree abroad. Professor Reagan, do you want to start with the answer for that?
Yeah, my answer is loans are not available from the Max Bell School, but they are available from McGill University. So we actually now have an arrangement with the central funding department, I suppose, at McGill. And what you can do is approach them, and if you can talk to our admissions person, Helen, and she can connect you with the appropriate people. But there is an organization within McGill that will provide student financing based on need, and that can be some combination of grants and loans.
And for SAIS Europe, we do not give out loans to non-Americans. Occasionally, and I don't want to say this for fear I'm going to be quoted, we may have 1 or 2 loans a year that if we have the access to them, we can offer to non-US nationals. But again, I would really encourage you, there's a lot of money out there. On our website, we have a number of different external resources. So I do would encourage you to look into that. Also, the cost of living in Bologna, and maybe Benjamin can attest to this, is not very high. I know you've been having some good meals, less than 10 euros, if I'm not mistaken, Benjamin.
Is that crack about my weight?
No, it's because
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Yeah, I've definitely had worse experiences than eating in Bologna, definitely.
We students live on about 1,000 euros a month. That's what the Italian government requires you demonstrate to get an Italian visa. So you need 9,000 euros to live for 9 months is minimal, and obviously some students have a lot more than that. But it's a university town, so the cost of living here is really low, and particularly rooming with other students. There's a question about one of our other cooperative degrees with HNC, and so I'll answer that directly. This presentation talks about the bilateral agreement between McGill and SAIS. Any other bilateral agreement that Johns Hopkins SAIS has is directly with the program. So if you want to go to McGill, you have to apply to McGill. But if it's not that if you're in an HNC, which is one of our cooperative degrees, you'd have to formally apply and go through their full academic listing. So if I could ask that student that wrote about HNC, just send me an email and I'm happy to clarify anything.
But Daniela, I would say it's worth emphasizing for this cooperative degree, you end up with 2 degrees. That's really
Yes.
important. So it
Yes.
doesn't matter which order. If you do Max Bell and then Bologna, or Bologna and then Max Bell, you get 2 degrees. You get your degree at the end of Max Bell, whichever year that is, and you get your degree at the end of SAIS, whenever that is.
Exactly. And we have a student that's writing coming from SAIS as a first-year Maya. So I'm assuming the student currently is either here already as a first-year Maya. In order to fulfill the requirements for completing the program, I would only need to complete all the economics requirements and language requirements. So for SAIS, if you are thinking of going to McGill, the requirements that you need to fulfill with us are 2 economics courses, which you would do this year. And by the time you graduate, if you're accepted into McGill, you need to fulfill our language requirement. That's for us. McGill, though, has their own requirements.
And the McGill requirements, you could take a look on our website, but currently the way the program is designed at Max Bell is there are 2 economics courses among the core policy courses, one in microeconomics, one in macro. In my view, and I'm an economist, remember this, you can never have too much economics.
Right.
Benjamin might disagree with this, actually, but my view is you can never have too much economics.
We have a question again about language. This is from a student that's currently at McGill. The student writes, if you're a native English speaker and have language proficiency, would like to demonstrate language proficiency in a secondary language not taught at SAIS, would this still fulfill the requirement? It would not fulfill the requirement for Maya. So the current languages that you have to have proficiency at the end of the 2 years are either in Italian, French, Spanish, Portuguese, German, Russian, and did I say Arabic? Did I say Arabic? I can't remember. Hopefully I said them all. But so those are the languages that are taught at SAIS Europe. And so I know a lot of the students at McGill have French, which is great. You have to read our language proficiency levels, and I'll put in the chat what those levels are in a little bit. It's also listed on our website because every language has slightly different proficiency levels. Obviously with Arabic, as it's a very difficult language, proficiency is defined differently than we would define for a Romance language. So you would need to meet the proficiency in one of the languages that we teach. Professor Reagan, can students take language courses when they're at McGill?
Yes, I think the answer is yes, but I don't think you're going to have the time. Okay. is my short answer. Look, if students want to take other courses, language training, we have a separate language training part of McGill. You can do that, but I really believe that the program is so intense that you will not want to take other courses in sort of a serious way. You simply will not have the time.
Great. So the question is for you, Professor Reagan. The student writes, I'm joining from upstate New York. Have you experienced any issues with international students wishing to stay in Quebec after completing the MPP? I ask this because the Quebec Experience Program requires 12 months work experience to apply for permanent selection, and the postgrad work permit that Canada offers is limited to the length of the university's program. In McGill's case, 11 months, or 3 years if the program is greater than 18 months. That sounds pretty technical. I don't know if you.
So look, I may require Helen to come in here and help me, but as I said before, about 60% of our students, 55 to 60% of our students in the Max Bell MPP program are from outside of Canada, and many of those actually want to stay in Quebec or in Canada after the program, and many of them do successfully. Now, I think there's a clear advantage in if you're going to do the SAIS Max Bell combination, I think there's a clear advantage in doing, and if you're an international student and you want to stay in Canada afterward, there's a clear advantage in doing SAIS first and then Max Bell, because you have to apply for this sort of thing within a few months of finishing the Max Bell program. Now, there may be more details that Helen can give you. Almost certainly there are, and maybe she has to correct something I've said. Absolutely possible. Helen?
Everything you said is correct. The only thing I have to say is that, yes, our program is 11 months, but you are technically registered for a full year. So you would apply as a full, 1-year program. So you would likely get either a 1 to 3 year postgraduate work permit, We can't guarantee that you'd get more than 1 year, but some of our students have received the 3 years, even though it's a 1 year. That's on the agent that's reviewing your application that decides. We have no say in that. But you're only guaranteed a year, but you could get up to 3.
Fantastic. Thank you both. There's another question for you, Professor Reagan. Does the MPP application process have some sort of interview component, virtual or in person, or is the admissions process mainly focused on the written application?
Great question. And I think the answer is this year we will be introducing an interview component. So in the first few years, that wasn't the case. But you still want to, you still have to have your CV and your statement of purpose or your personal statement. And let me say something about the personal statement. It is important that I think what you want to do for this is take a close look at our program and make sure you understand how our program operates and the role of practitioners. And then what you want to do, and I think you've got a 1,000-word limit, is explain to us why you want to come to the MaxBell MPP program. What is it going to help you achieve, and what do you want to do afterward? What we're trying to see is whether you would be a good fit with everybody else into this program. But I think you should also be prepared for an interview component. The interview, I think, would be very brief, 10 or 15 minutes, a chit chat. It's kind of the interview equivalent of your personal statement.
I would just add that the interview at SAIS Europe is mandatory. Benjamin, do you remember your interview?
I do.
How was
Simpler
it?
times. We're all stuck indoors. It was a good time. Anyway, sorry, but
Do you remember who you interviewed with?
that would have been yourself. Yes.
So we do interviews. They can either be with senior staff, myself, faculty members. The interview, we see it as a wonderful opportunity for you to get to know us. So obviously the interviews aren't very long. They're about maybe 25, 30 minutes. They're standard questions, but there's a number of minutes left at the end because we realize you're making an investment in your future. So if there's anything that you want to share with us or ask us, we want to be a resource for you. Great. Okay, I don't see any other questions in the chat box. Maybe wait another minute or so. Professor Reagan, is there anything else that you want to weave in or let our prospective students know about that we didn't get a chance to touch upon, or any last parting words of advice?
Well, I guess my parting words of advice are you should take a close look at what we present on our website, and you should compare it to other MPP programs. So once you decide that you're interested in a Master of Public Policy, you have to know that there are different ones out there. Now, we might be one of the only ones that have an agreement with SAIS Bologna, and that's okay, so that's great, that's a selling feature. But we're not the only MPP program around, and we are different than the other ones for intentionally, I mean, it's intentionally designed to be different than the other ones. So I really encourage you to take a strong look at other programs and at ours, and then to see which one really, suits you the best. But ours is intentionally designed to have a high ratio of practical to theoretical and a high ratio of practitioner to academic. Now, I think that's terrific, and that's why the program is designed that way, but maybe not everybody wants that. So take a close look at the program, and if you've got any questions, you send an email in to us and we will answer it, and Helen almost certainly will be the one answering it, and she will answer it with the truth, with accuracy, and with high speed.
I would only add, because I saw this question in the chat box, we are separate application processes. So you need to fill in separate applications on our application. If you are already at MaxBell, or there's a drop-down menu, because we do want to know if you're only going to be coming to us for a year if admitted, but we are separate applications.
And Helen has just put in the email address for questions at MaxBell.
Great.
Into the chat box.
Okay. Benjamin, do you have any last words of advice to our applicants here?
Yes, I guess, I mean, very rudimentary. Start early, don't do the last minute. Think about, like I said, your writing sample and just sort of the kinds of information you're doing it, and sift through what really connects you and what you're really passionate about, public policy or international affairs given. And I think that's about it. I would only add maybe to take one more swig of water here.
Product placement, product placement.
No, I'm above that. That's
I love it.
I would never stoop to that.
Do notice his collar, his green collar. He also has his, this is Johns Hopkins badge, his green badge.
He has a very nice Max Bell, a sweater as well that I seem to recall, but you don't have it on today.
It's actually literally right over there on the other end of this computer.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank Professor Reagan for his thorough presentation. I want to thank Benjamin for sharing his experience with current student. Helen, thank you for jumping in there. And I just want to wish everyone the best of luck. We are a resource for you. We're going to guide you. We look forward to hearing your questions. And we want to wish you the best of luck with whatever you decide. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Benjamin. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you as well.
Study hard. Study hard.
I will.